This is A Line Around Your Thoughts, a podcast that centers on conversations with artists, writers, musicians, and creatives from around the Inland Northwest. I'm your host, E.J. Iannelli. Today, I am joined in the Roquehart Media Studio by Karin Wedemeyer, who is the founder and executive director of the Music Conservatory of Sandpoint, as well as the founder of Bel Canto Opera, which is also based in Sandpoint. So, welcome, Karin.
Thank you. A pleasure to be here.
I am really looking forward to this conversation because we tend to be very Spokane-centric. I mean, this is recorded in Spokane. I'm based in Spokane, and so there are a lot of Spokane things on my radar. But I think it's really important to highlight what is taking place in all the cities and all the towns that are surrounding Spokane and that are found throughout the Inland Northwest. And you are doing some really amazing things in Sandpoint.
Thank you.
And Sandpoint is I don't think people necessarily overlook the fact that Sandpoint is quite an arts hub. But maybe I think it deserves to be a little better known as kind of this arts powerhouse in northern Idaho. And so what you're doing at the Music Conservatory of Sandpoint is kind of noteworthy in its own right. And so for folks who aren't familiar with the Music Conservatory of Sandpoint, I just kind of wanted to revisit the history a little bit so people know how long this has been going on and how much it has grown in those years. So if I'm not mistaken, It was founded you moved to Sandpoint in 2006.
Correct.
Drawn by the joie de vivre.
Well, I actually was kind of a pioneer, an innocent pioneer, little did I know, because my husband actually has family nearby, and our children were just little tiny pumpkins at that time. So when we moved, I think I really was a pioneer. I'm a pioneer, I think, in spirit anyway, so very little scares me. So that's how we arrived in Sandpoint. My second home, aside being from Germany, I speak, you'll hear it by my accent, was Venice, California. Mm-hmm. So to go from there to Sandpoint was an interesting journey, to say the least. But that's how I ended up here, there.
And so 3 years within kind of setting up shop in Sandpoint, then you found yourself co-founding the Music Conservatory of Sandpoint.
I found myself bored. And pretty much right away, and then I actually had a partner at the very beginning, and it was kind of a fun story because my daughter was 4 and she was taking violin lessons, and we discovered that Sandpoint, the music theory, was maybe lacking some things, and we thought that we would maybe hatch out a plan to have a one-day workshop. And to just help kind of with the musical literacy, we met in a little cafe and we ordered coffee. It was too hot to drink. So within the half hour waiting for it to cool down, we decided to might just go for a conservatory. So if we had ordered iced tea, I wouldn't be talking to you today, for sure. And that's how it started. And we laid out the foundation and we took our time to create, what a conservatory, American-European concept would be like. And we started, and the founding day was September 21st, and that's relevant in a later time of this conversation.
Well, is it relevant simply because that was pretty much the start of the economic recession? And so the economy was collapsing around you, and you said, let's carry on with this idea to found a music conservatory.
Yes, and there were people who thought we were completely crazy. And yes, I will say I am the mad scientist behind this project. And as such, and very little intimidates me at this point, And even then, but also we were very diligent. We started with just 8 students. And I think it was really important for me psychologically to say, we are not going to grow past what we can manage. So understanding, the economic challenges at that time, we really grew very systematically and never let it grow into a runaway conservatory or out of control. And that kept us safe. If it were just 8, but then it became 16, then it became, I remember, 32. And then, we moved around and then we found our permanent home about a year and a half after we founded the school. And then it became just me because there was a realization that the intensity of the work, it was 8 days a week, 48 hours a day. No two ways. I mean, that wasn't everybody's cup of tea. So my family, they kind of integrated into, all of this in one way or another. And then the adventure just kind of grew out of there slowly but systematically. And now we're in our 17th year.
And was there ever a temptation? You say that you kind of grew, not exponentially, but you grew systematically. But was there ever the temptation to grow faster or as fast as the demand allowed? Or, was there a kind of a very deliberate process and a very, very deliberate conversation? Like, we could take 32 this year, but we will only take 16.
That actually was not the problem. The amount of students was not the problem because we had really, from the get-go, wonderful staff. And then we had the space that we occupied allowed us for more students. So in the community programs that we had actually was okay, whether it was 16 or 20, that really didn't matter so much. It was more how many departments were we going to seed. And so that grew over time as we were beginning to attract more talent, that we were able to, to home and for them to live in Sandpoint. And then in 2019, with the help of a foundation, we were able to purchase our building. And the building is a really relevant building. It's in downtown Sandpoint. It's the old fire station. And then we were really able to spread our wings. Once you own your shelter, you own your future.
Yeah.
Right.
And that building has a lot of history. I think it's got 150 years of history, doesn't it?
So it was built in 1909, and I think it was
okay.
completed 1910 or 1912. And it was, so it's a significant, amazing building. And to own this every day, I still say, it can't be. It's just too incredible. And, looking back, it was destiny to begin with, and it makes perfect sense that we are where we are.
And you were talking about the fortuitousness of having coffee instead of iced tea, and that led to this decision. And I think there's also another anecdote where you were on your way to buy toilet paper.
Okay.
And you were on your way to buy toilet paper, and you wound up with a building instead.
Well, actually, so once we had the building, I had a vision, and I knew we needed to restore the building, and it included the bell. So we had talked to engineers, and also we had created a plan, and then we were ready to look for the bell. And that was right shortly after COVID. So we worked together with a museum and says, well, let's put out an article to see if anybody has any recollection. And so the article appeared, and there was no way that I anticipated the outcome. But on that day, yes, I was in hunting mode, and I needed to go to Costco, and I had a check in my pocket to hunt for toilet paper, which was at that time, in that moment, a real task, a real journey. And I was very serious about it. And then I received the phone call, and it said, well, we found the bell. And but the owner was not willing to sell it. Of course, he says, well, we have to negotiate that because we have to explain to him the bell needs to come home. And it was in an antique estate that was on the exit of Medical Lake. And it was, where the spaceship was? Yeah. Everybody has driven by there 100,016 times, right? So have I. So I know I've seen the bell, but there was no connection that it was our bell. So after negotiations, he said yes. So the story is, I didn't buy toilet paper, which was okay. See, I didn't buy toilet paper. I bought a bell, and the bell was slightly more expensive than toilet paper, but that was all worth it. So I was well equipped to handle, the transaction. And I went over there, and it was a surreal experience to go there and ring it, F major, and to and to say, wow, this was meant to be. It was meant to be. That there was this really, and these moments of this is destiny, is that they came throughout our journey in this building and what we were creating. There are many stories that say this is destiny. This was meant to be. And if I share one more story.
Oh, by all means, yeah.
So I think 3 years ago, So then we had the Bel, and then bringing it to Sandpoint. It lives right now next to the Caboose on Lakeview Park. So we're not ready to lift it because that's another story, and that still deserves to be written and told in the future. But Nancy Rank, who was is a local historian, pointed out at some point that, did you know there was a conservatory before? And I said, wow, I did not know that. Who would have thought? Yes, so it opened in 1908 in Sandpoint. And I said, well, 1908, there were maybe 5 conservatories in the United States, right? I mean, it's not a common thing, and especially not in a milling town or logging town like Sandpoint. And I thought that was really generally interesting. And we did some research, and we found out one of the really fun facts is that one of the early people who were involved in that was a Norwegian opera singer, Olivia Dahl. And I says, well, this is interesting here. I am a German opera singer. Okay. I'm seeing the dots. Then there was an estate sale, and one of our internal spies said, you need to go there because they have the announcement of the original opening of the original conservatory. And I went there, and I almost ended up in a fist fight because I absolutely wouldn't walk away from this, and somebody else was looking at it. But they saw death in my eyes, so they surrendered the item. And I auctioned it, and I discovered that they had the same opening date we had, September 21st. So, the announcement of the opening of the original conservatory, which was part of a business district, which was just about across the street, now happily hangs in our foyer. And I glanced over and I said, so we had our birthday celebration now, September 21st. We just kind of aligned them. And I said, well, these are just too many stories. Somehow we have to just kind of accept something here. So last year I wrote the opera, and I won't say I wrote the opera because I didn't write the music, but the story. It was called Olivia Dahl. And, we brought her back to life and tell her own story. And that was a really, really fun kind of project. But whenever the lights flicker in our building, it's like, oh, this must be Olivia. She's trying to tell us something. So it feels that she's somehow around us. And this building is very special. Somehow, when you walk into it, I feel, and people say that too, you feel the spirit of it. And there's something really wondrous about it that enhances our project for creative placemaking, and that somehow it feels sanctioned. It says, yes, go for it.
Yeah, there are too many coincidences there
Yes.
that it's not cosmic. There's something in the stars.
There's something in there. And I think the students feel it, the parents feel it, and it gives me a sense of, there were many challenges. Of course, there was COVID, there's inflation, and I won't go into the challenges now. We all know them. It gives me a sense of, this is okay. We're going to be okay. Mm-hmm. We have conquered all of this, and there's one Mount Everest. We will climb the next one too. I've got my snowshoes ready, and it's that kind of, even through moments of deep anxiety, are we going to be able to do what we want to do? The people that are involved, be it the staff and the student, they're so wondrous in so many beautiful ways that I say, we'll be okay, in many ways.
Because you have so much of a history to look back on, and a history of very measured growth.
Yes.
And so you've grown from those 8 students, and even though you were very deliberate and very systematic about that growth, you're now at what, 500?
So we have about... Altogether, yes, we have this huge Music Matters program that has doubled in size this year, and I'll talk about this, why. And then we have our private students, and then we have our group students, like our little Mozart programs, our early childhood. So if you add this, we are coming to at least 500 students, which is incredible, all things considered. And we are sometimes we'll see tendencies, like right now, our Music Matters program, which includes orchestra, and it involves Jan Palland and NIPH, It involves
NIPH being the North Idaho Philharmonia.
correct,
Yeah.
and it involves early childhood education, theater. Then we're working with the school district. We are providing the after-school programs, and that's choirs. That has grown just incredibly, and there we can handle a lot of growth. That's really not a problem at all. Whether there are 10 children in a choir or 30, that's not a problem. We can handle as many as we can put on the Canada stage. That's where our limitation is.
Yeah.
And we're probably going to hit that, for the first time this year, says, there's not even room for headache on that stage, so we're going to need to really pay attention to that. And that's where really the numbers just, keep growing, and people know that we in there with our heart and soul, and they feel that for their children it's a really good and wholesome place to be. I call it, the Julie Hart of the Wild West, and there's some truth to that, because aside from this, we applied a lot of diligence, and really what classical music requires is the discipline and the diligence and pushing forwards with skill building. At the same time, we also relax. We have a contemporary music department. That's a lot of fun. And we have our opera, and we have musical theater. So we have a lot of diversity within our, four corners of our building. And our students come from many different corners. So everybody's equal in the building. And we have teachers coming. We're kind of international in our spirit. Of course, I am there, but Jan is from Prague. We have teachers from Romania, from Poland, from, Germany, from the US. So it kind of creates that flow of knowledge that goes back and forth, which is really beautiful for the arts, because it does need that exchange to grow. And students feel safe there. I think that is kind of puts it together in a coconut shell, not peanut shell.
And I think it's important for folks to understand that, what you've described sounds like a very vibrant, dynamic place of all these musicians practicing, but you have very dedicated programs. So I
Yes.
think you have, 7 different departments. So you have voice, you have contemporary, you have strings, you have woodwinds and brass and percussion.
Yeah, and piano. The piano, of course, is a huge program.
right.
Voice is definitely growing. Then we have sub-programs like voice. Then we have opera. We have contemporary voice. We were just able to recruit a really wonderful talent, Sandra Marlowe, who's opera trained and also pianist, but she's also teaches jazz, and she's a wonderful performer. Then we have Brenda Rutledge. She's now with us for, I think, almost 14 years. She's a beautiful mezzo-soprano. So she's also part of Bel Canto. So I think that, with all, and this is where the growth came, right? We added departments and sub-departments as we felt we were capable, without sacrificing quality, but that we really wanted to be sure that whatever we were able to do, we could do well.
But even with all the will in the world, and even all the money in the world, which I know isn't at anyone's disposal right now, this wouldn't be possible if you didn't have the local talent. And you have a faculty of, I think, about 25, if my rough estimate is right.
It's 20, between 18 and 20, so yes.
Yeah, but these are all extremely accomplished
Yes.
musicians.
Yes.
And just really experts in their various instruments.
Yes.
And so you've been able to do this where you have, all these very skilled professionals then passing on their knowledge to these students.
So aside from expertise, the staff that we look to attract is also who have a lot of goodwill and who have a specific care. And really important, the school is not about competing against each other. We are really intentionally collaborative. When you put this together, that's a special spirit that it creates. Now, are our students capable of competing? By all means. Are they succeeding? Absolutely. It's not what defines them. What defines them is the passion that they feel for what they do, their capacity, their capability, but also working together as a team, be it in the orchestra, When students are exposed to that spirit, it changes them in a way that they look for other people to join them in, right? A pianist will look, oh, I will accompany you, in your group there. Hey, a violinist will look for a flutist. And then you have, this kind of collaborative spirit. And when you are in there, you hear all of these different sounds. So there's inspiration right there. One student will hear, oh, I really love the flute. I didn't know how much I loved it. Now I hear it. And that distinguishes a school like this from a one-on-one private studio, right? And there's some who say, this is what I want. And then there will say who say, this is what I want. But I think the inspiration also among staff, they constantly play together, is where they feel the enjoyment of the togetherness.
Yeah.
And that is right now so desperately relevant in a time where we want to seek shelter behind devices. And, where we are losing one of the most important human skills is to be together, communicate with each other, and, to push back against that lobby that wants to detach us from each other is a challenge. But our students and parents, they really need it. And while they intellectually often argue, I'm so excited about AI, and so we find them so happy in the orchestra. So their intuition maybe doesn't speak loudly, but it guides them. And why, they want to be part of that, overwhelmingly big, seductive narrative of, I can handle AI, I can do all of this with it. At the same time, their bare human needs need to be met. And I think we have that capacity to meet that need. And that's a compelling narrative right now. And I hope to go with more platforms to talk about, as I feel competent, because I've been talking to so many parents, and I'm observing what I see is I know we can't let go of this. And I will have to be the Joan of Arc, in that way to really defend why this is absolutely important in times like now and in the future. Everybody wants to look in one direction because the economy says, go that way. And yet we have to say, but if you go in your backpack, make sure you don't leave this behind.
And that intersection of music and technology is something that you have dealt with relatively recently in operatic form. But before we get to that, I want to go back to this spirit of collaboration, because I think that's incredibly important. But we also have to acknowledge that the classical realm is extremely competitive, and people are assessed based on their skill and their placement in various competitions and things like that. So as you're fostering this very collaborative spirit, are you also, in your opinion, preparing these students for the very competitive field of classical music?
Yes. So for one thing, it's competitive because the field is too small.
Yeah.
That's a problem, right? So part of our mission is to broaden that field. There should be excellence in classical music or in music altogether everywhere. And so once you create more opportunities, then you also have, you have the less, I'm competing for one place against 100, for one chair, against 100 others. Music should be everywhere, and that's what we are standing for. And, within the Pacific Northwest in our corner, we have created a huge infrastructure where very suddenly it becomes relevant. Bonners Ferry now has an orchestra. They need excellent musicians. NIPH, needs excellent musicians. So excellence now is not a scarcity or rarity. It now becomes a standard. It's kind of like in Brazil with soccer. Everybody plays, and is it competitive? Yes, but there are so many opportunities. Everybody finds an excellent place where they will be challenged. There's no reason. And here, I'll can draw a line over to Bel Canto. Classical music often has that, oh, it's stuffy, it's exclusive, right? And I'm really wanting to break through that barrier. No, it's not exclusive. It should be inclusive. There's something we can take away. The appreciation of beauty is just one thing, and the art. And there are some ways to make it really exciting as we are taking this into the modern world and making it relevant. That's what Bel Canto is about. But we don't want to create, and goes way past music. We don't want to create a world that we have created right now of winners and losers. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's a problem in society right now. If we have too many losers or people who define themselves, I'm a loser because in this competition or in this competing world for resources I haven't won, and that creates a really negative internal dialogue, depression, addiction. You can go that route, but that's not the route we want to travel. So we are not a world of winners and losers, and it's very interesting because in our journey we have discovered so many students who are actually artistic heroes. But they looked at themselves as losers because they were not mainstream learners, they were not mainstream people, and they were not soccer players. And there are so many of them. And they're our greatest creative resources and thinkers. Once you unleash that potential in them, no matter if they play for an orchestra or however they are going to use what is provided for them, they're going to be the creative thinkers of the futures, and there's never a loss. So not everybody necessarily aspires to, join the New York Symphony or so. They just want to unleash the power of self-expression, which is the antidote to self-destruction. Mm-hmm. And when that power is unleashed and they become creative and understand how to use their imagination to their full potential, they never identify with competition and losing, ever. What defines them is their capacity to create and be imaginative and be artistic. That's a huge buffer for them to not fall into the trap of what social media or so tells them who they are. They define themselves, and they don't let anybody else define them. And they're going to be okay with whatever is out there because they don't differentiate between winners and losers.
And this avenue to self-expression, mm-hmm. which is healthy, mm-hmm. The individual has to be aware of it. And you were mm-hmm. talking about, and this is a conversation that routinely comes up, it's the stigma that's associated with classical music, that's Absolutely. Associated with opera, and all the the negative popular associations with that, or just the disinterested. It would maybe not even negative. It's just a lack of interest. And so for young kids to realize that this is a path of self-expression that's available to them, they have to be aware of it in the first place. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's the Music Matters program in particular that is trying to create that entry point and that mm-hmm. initial exposure to kids so that they realize that this whole world exists, mm-hmm. and then they can pursue it within that. But within if their ignorance is preventing them, and I don't mean ignorance in the pejorative sense, it's just a lack of knowledge about the classical world.
Exposure.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Then they're not aware of this. But the Music Matters in particular seems to be that entry point. And you also mentioned that it had grown.
It has doubled in size. And so, it's a grant-supported program. So it's incredibly affordable and accessible. And I will never leave a child outside, mm-hmm. period. It's just, right there. So alongside that comes an instrument library that we have created. And I named it library for a specific reason, is so that children who join Music Matters, we can equip them with an instrument. They check it out, just like a book. And I purposefully used the word library because I wanted that level of accessibility. Mm-hmm. And there is no fee involved. And now Fiddle in Red, who is a local technician, and you may have known of him or heard of him, he is joined us in our building, and he maintains all these instruments. So we are really self-contained in that way that we can make sure we can take care of all the things that need taken care of. Now, Very often children are not really, for example, exposed to the human voice. When they hear the human voice, be it in opera or in oratory works or so, they are absolutely, I want to do this. So the lack of exposure that existed before they were deprived. And now there are so many children involved. It's no longer, oh, I don't want to do it because nobody else does it. Now it's like, oh my God, all my friends are playing the violin. I can't wait, and I love it. And so I've got these really excited children coming in, and every child goes through me, and we have a discussion why, what inspired you. That's why I feel I'm well equipped to handle various conversations there. And, it's really funny because kids are very excited about various instruments. I've heard them, and then she says, well, do you want to become average or excellent? Except one, it's always excellent. And then that opens the door to a really beautiful discussion of what does it take. And there's but one child who actually became excellent. He was a young man in percussion. He said, no, average is just fine.
He was totally content with average.
He was totally content with that. But it's really interesting that children have a sense of wanting to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And when you explain to them the process, and then they realize that they don't have to work this by themselves, we're actually all there, then it becomes, oh, I can achieve this. And then you unlock their potential. And it's really a beautiful journey to see, when you do this, because that skill translates into all aspects in life. And nowadays, where many children or young people think a skill is downloadable, you don't, it's just there. I don't have to acquire it. It's there for me. It's a convenient thing. And you teach them, no, mastery needs to be earned. And in music, every step has to be earned. That's a lifelong lesson for them that is, I will want to say, important for the whole entire life, truly, because how it impacts them and everything else they do.
Mm-hmm. And I would say that the simple music appreciation, it's really something that is multi-generational because it's not necessarily in this day and age that we think a skill can be easily acquired. I've met folks of older generations who just assume that they just don't have an appreciation of virtuosity. Mm-hmm. They think, oh yeah, that's a skill that I could acquire if I decided to pick it up. And it isn't until you actually grapple with an instrument that most of us realize just how long the road to mastery actually is.
And sometimes, when we have some very advanced students, and when they perform, the audience is in awe. They can't believe that these young people can accomplish this. And it says, well, this is just part of their journey. Just imagine what they will be doing in 5 years from now. And that is where the educational moment for the public comes in, where they realize, it says, wow, we underestimated our children. I'd like to share a story, if I may.
I do. On that note, okay. I have to say, I would be so encouraged to hear that in a way, because they were capable of far more than we ever thought possible.
Yes.
Is such a lovely statement in a way. Yeah.
So quite a few years ago, we had our Music Without Borders program, and we took which is El Sistema. We had a relationship with Mexico and their El Sistema program, and they would come every summer to perform in Sandpoint, and then we would go there. So I actually went, and I took 4 students, and for 1 week, and every day, after school, in the El Sistema program, the kids would come together. It didn't matter how poor or rich they were; everybody was equal. And they went through 3 to 4 hours of orchestral training every day. So our students were absorbed into this program, and they trained every day for hours. And then, they were done after a week. And when we were on our way back, I said, well, what do you think every day? Can you imagine? They all looked at me, and with one voice, they said, what are you guys waiting for? And I thought that was such a profound statement. And I says, you are so right. what are we waiting for? And so moving forward, when I look at students and I say, who's a wonderful example of this is actually Jan Palland, who is a conductor from Prague. And, he lives by that because he will bring students beyond what they ever thought is possible for them. And he unleashes that potential in a way that is absolutely incredible. He has a deep understanding of what they are capable of. And when they're playing in his orchestra, in the performances, because often as a mixed orchestra, it has mentors. It's a little bit El Sistema-ish, I guess, in that way. And he puts, music in front of them where it says, oh my goodness, are you sure about this? He got them to play the Beethoven's Ninth, which we did this year, and play, the official original version. Now, they were not beginners. The beginners in Music Matters played the slightly reduced version, and they did a fabulous job, and all the singers sang the Ode to Joy in German without blinking at all. And they were insistent, no, we're going to sing. Of course we are. And I thought, okay, here we are again. We're coming to this point of they're showing us what they need to know and what they want to know. And we need to accept them as our teachers more than the other way around. And we really need to understand their potential and what they deserve to know. And that's going to be part of our journey. And that's the most exciting part.
And, you are taking, and you've already touched on this, you are taking a similar approach to Bel Canto, which is aiming to make opera, I think, a little more accessible and a little more fun, a little looser, a little more lighthearted. It doesn't have to be, men and women in Viking helmets, which is the popular conception or misconception. It's something that can be as approachable as a pop concert. It can be as fun as a musical, and so you've been doing this and. Most recently you did Kaput, which, as I mentioned earlier, kind of examined this intersection of music and technology. So talk about how you're assembling these, because these aren't necessarily original music. You are pulling from the operatic canon and assembling something new out of them.
I create a completely new narrative. Mm-hmm. And so if I may just give a blip about myself. So I'm a professional opera singer. I'm a dramatic soprano, a spinto. And so I have sung in Europe and I have sung in the United States, but I was never intrigued by traditional opera. It just never really took to me. I was kind of bored by the stereotypes, and I loved the music, but I wasn't really too keen on just singing what was there in front of me. And I think, it's decades ago, my first production was Der Freischütz. And I sang Agatha, but I messed with the production, and I integrated Star Trek moments into it, which were really fun, And there were little moments where I was curious if people noticed that make it so moments, right? And from there, the desire grew in me that I was always going to be an independent artist, independent performer, and that there was a lot more that could be done with opera. So 10 years ago, Bel Canto was born, and my first big production was A Journey of the Light. And then I did Singvergnügen, The Murderous Flute. Then COVID struck, and then we kind of had to reboot. Now, the singers that I bring to the forefront are singers who have a lot of potential but need more work. So I do master classes every Saturday morning with my singers, and they have grown tremendously. I've been teaching also for decades. And from there, I get inspirations from what's currently going on in this universe, right? So Kaput was the latest production was our very ambiguous relationship with technology. And Kochava, which is an IT company in Sandpoint, allowed us to raid their kaput items. And so we furnished the whole stage and, with monitors, everything that was broken, and the whole school, foyer, everything was broken items. And then we had maintenance or repair shop. It was Kaputt and Repairs and Sympathy. And then every singer picked their own aria, and their job is to create a story, what went kaput with their devices, using their aria. So they had an artistic challenge. And that's how I work with students, because I want them to be imaginative and not be just, confounded by stereotypes, but how can you bring your aria alive, and how can you create the story? So we had 6 or 7 singers, and we used, if you looked at the menu, right, the program, we had Papageno, Papagena, we had from Tito's, Clemente del Tito, we had the quartet from the Magic Flute. So we rated classical music and some contemporary music very joyfully. And but then the storytelling is what's exciting, because I want artists to participate in the creative process, and I want to take them past this is what's written. What can you do with this in this context? At the same time, we address the problem of recycling, the problem of being glued to your device, and the calamities that can happen. One singer, her 4-year-old threw her device into a blender. So she had to describe that in her aria and sing about this, and then turn her broken device into, the repair shop. And then we had a little genius, 10-year-old IT Einstein, put something together out of Lego and marshmallows. That was, and when the person came to pick up, that's when their second aria was. They needed to come and pay an incredible, outrageous amount of money to pick up their device, and then they got nothing what they thought it would be. So they had to sing an aria of deep lament. And it's really funny, and throughout this, the truly profound thought came up when they sang their first aria of I Lost What I Loved. It really occurred to me that is how we have a relationship. Now we transferred a relationship from a human to a device that's cold and dead. And, yet we have these incredibly passionate feelings for it. When it breaks, then it's the end of the world. So the singers really experienced the end of the world for them. I thought, wow, this is actually really profound. Is there intent to remove us from the human-to-human relationships to, the human-device relationship? And that's a thought worth pursuing. And that was a takeaway, as everybody sang, the sorrow they experienced of something broken, and then it wasn't recoverable. And then we had a casket on stage, and at the very end, they had to drop it into the casket and free themselves. And that was a takeaway. So it was a comedy, but it had a serious kind of undertone. And that is why I want to take Bel Canto, is wrap things in comedy, really inspire singers to not reach only higher vocal technique goals, but really get their imagination going and understand art can be so much more, opera can be so much more. And I always like to never give away anything beforehand, because I want it to be unexpected for the audience and an all-immersive experience. So there's more to come, of course. More projects that I'm working on. A very big one is next year. It's Liebestod. And that will have a very serious meaning, in that is our relationship with our planet, how we get where we got. And then that will actually be premiered at the Canada. And then it will center around Mild und Leise. And then what sacrifices we will have to make. And I won't give this away because I want that to be a surprise. So that is, I'm working on this in my brain for next year. And then there will be moments of comedy again. And so, but that's what Bel Canto is about, and which gives us a lot of fun, and how we hope for opera buffs to not walk out on us. But we've had a lot of people who would have said, I would never go to an opera, and they absolutely loved it. And they were completely open to embracing the human voice in this form and to say yes. And we need a lot of more yes sayers. So for this art form to survive, and if we need to grow, to be very creative with it, then why not?
Yeah, and you're giving so there's a couple things. You're giving the singers an opportunity to connect with the music through the things that are relevant to them. Mm-hmm. They might not have experienced necessarily a certain tragedy, but they can relate to the tragedy of having your computer crash on you or mm-hmm. having your iPad go in the blender. And by the same token, you're also creating that connection point for the audience, even the mm-hmm. opera curious or maybe the opera skeptics. It creates that connection point with them. The other thing that it's doing is it's giving these budding singers or these interested singers an opportunity to perform in front of an audience, mm-hmm. because if they were waiting for full-blown operatic productions mm-hmm. to come around, they'd be waiting quite a while because we're kind of in a dry spell at the moment.
Correct.
So by having these operettas or operatic reviews that are kind of thematically arranged, it gives them so many different opportunities to connect with the music and perform the music, and then hopefully share that love.
And they're very free on stage. So that's the other thing, because there's a lot of improvisation. I don't give them each breath. I don't give them each step. They understand the theme, and then they have to connect with it on their own accords. I give them vocal technique, of course, but their skill to improvise and interpret is to them. And I think that challenge they really seem to like. So there again is a collaborative spirit, in many ways. And it's taking on well. Interestingly enough, my son recently sent me a YouTube video of a famous artist, I guess, in Spain, who's also going along that line, and she's integrated orchestra. And so I think there is maybe global awakening or an awakening of we can do so much more with this art form, to not let it die.
So before we talk about some of these other events that are coming mm-hmm. up, because Music Conservatory of Sandpoint is affiliated with a lot of events that are coming up in December, I just wanted to touch on Tortellini, which is another Bel Canto production that in title alone caught my interest. And the subtitle is it The Day We Ran Out of Lobster?
Yes.
Okay. What was that about?
So that actually included a dinner, right? And obviously we served tortellini. And so the setting was a restaurant. And so we had a big cooking pot on there, it was cooking. And in there was our star young gentleman who was a hero, who was a lobster. And he was cooking in there and having a really good time. And when nobody was looking, cooks were coming and people were coming, putting odd things in there, right? And at some point, he just was done with it. And he jumped off and he escaped. So we were out of lobster. So we sang all of these different aspects. Okay, what are we going to do? So we served only tortellini. And and we did serve tortellini. So it kind of ran, the subtext was being in the restaurant. And we had some really interesting music in there. One was excerpts from Pimpinone from Telemann, which was really hilarious. And there were just a lot of really fun things of how we had to tell, the customers that unfortunately we don't have lobster. So that was the motivation of, we have this incredible wine. And so we sang all of these arias to defend ourselves. Why not? And so that was served with a dinner. And that was a lot of fun. I mean, and I could just see the audience just enjoying it because every moment was unexpected and unforeseeable. And that's kind of also part of it. We wanted to come in and not have certain expectations, but to be really surprised by what's there and to really engage. So we always engage audience. So there's many different things that happen. And so that was about tortellini, yes.
Yeah, and it's nice to come together around a meal as well. So everything's always more enjoyable when there's a food involved.
For sure. Yes.
But then coming up a little further, there is on December 7th, there's a Czech Christmas Mass.
So that's the Bohemische Hirtenmesse.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting.
It is absolutely glorious. It is so beautiful, and it's performed by a small chamber orchestra, which is actually our students. So Jan has been working with them, and there will be section leaders as well. Then we have Bel Canto singers, and we'll have some other singers, but it's not a huge group. It's not meant to be sung by a huge group. And then we have our 4 soloists. I'll be singing soprano, Brenda is singing alto, and then Max Mendes is singing baritone, and then Logan Chevalier is singing the tenor part. The music is so lighthearted and just beautiful. And I hope with all the activities that are going on that it doesn't get overlooked, because it's a jewel of music, and it's by Jakobian Rüber, the Czech Christmas Mass, or we know it as, in Germany it's performed under Bohemische Hirtenmesse.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because it's not a piece that I was especially familiar with, and I would say that a lot of folks would not be familiar with it, because what they're going to hear are the Christmas oratorios, and they're going to be more familiar with that. This seems like a hidden gem.
It is a hidden gem, and that's part of having Jan there. He brings different choices of music. And that are not only glorious and beautiful, but then also educational, so that we can, people get exposed to music they would not generally hear or would even know exist, and say, oh, I'm so glad I listened to this. This is so beautiful. So, of course, that brings challenges upon us, because how do you make sure people know about it, and how can you explain of how wonderful, these pieces are? So hopefully, people are intrigued by just the Czech Christmas Mass, and knowing that Jan is conducting. So hopefully we'll have people come and enjoy something very unique.
Yeah, and then on the 9th there is the Music Matters. They have a Christmas concert, and so that sounds like it'll be a very seasonal program.
It is, and it's really wonderful because the energy all of these kids present, they're so ready to perform. And we had to go into the Panada. We used to go into the First Lutheran Church, but there's not enough room for a headache when they all come. They're so packed. So we had to say, okay, we need to go to the Panada, because the program doubled, and we have to be sure all the parents and grandparents and everybody who wants to come gets to come. So it's at 6:00 on December 9th, and it's joyful music. You'll hear the choir, you hear the orchestra, and you hear the percussion, and it's just really wonderful. They perform twice a year. They perform generally in April or May. This year they did the Ode to Joy, and for Christmas they're doing their Christmas repertoire. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I was saying, there are so many concerts throughout December, because then you've got the Nutcracker that comes after that, and I think there are 2 performances of that.
Mm-hmm. And IPH, so some of our students are for the first time are going to join their ballet. Which is exciting, right? It's a different feel. Working with singers and working with dancers will be uniquely different. So I'm going to be curious to see how they find each other. And then we have our 6th or 7th performance of Amal and the Night Visitors by Menotti, which is a beautiful children's opera on December 21st at the First Lutheran Church. And that's now, I would want to say, tradition. And hopefully also we see a lot of families there. It's just a beautiful story.
And is that a purely Bel Canto production, or are you uniting with the North Idaho Philharmonic? Or
not this time. Last year we had an orchestra. This time we are working with a pianist. And we the ensemble choir from Music Matters will be joining, and but also some Bel Canto singers. Yes, so that's a joint production.
Oh, very cool. Mm-hmm. Well, I would say that all sounds interesting, and leave it there, but I'm not sure if you're familiar with the fact that we conclude one interview and then we move into the lightning round. So are you ready for the lightning round?
I don't know what that is, but I am.
Okay. I have dubbed it the Blitzrunde for today.
Blitzrunde, kein Problem, auf jeden Fall.
All right. So this is just going to be a series of questions, and
Yes.
then you give your answer. Something that's kind of on the top of your head, and then we might have to tease some of the psychology of that out. First one is always an either or. Mm-hmm. Wagner or Mozart?
Oh, you're asking a dramatic soprano. They're apples versus oranges, and Wagner has a very different spiritual appeal than Mozart.
Okay, but I'm asking you to choose. If you had to throw all your eggs in with one, who are you going
I would probably
with?
go for Mozart.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Something a little lighter.
I don't think Mozart is light.
Okay.
I would argue that. I actually think he's also very humorous, and he addresses some very serious social issues in his music. He presents it in a beautiful package. Wagner is beautiful in a very different way, and I don't think they can really be compared, even though they may have the same goals.
Yeah, I would say that Mozart does a lot of what you said with a little bit of a smile, a little bit of a wink and a nod. Yeah.
Oh, he's a comedian. There's no two ways about that. Yes.
All right. The next question is the thing that you miss most from Germany, and this doesn't necessarily have to be an object. If you could import maybe a German quality to the United States or even this region, what would that be?
I think purpose. Germans are extraordinarily purpose-driven, and I think that's a really important part to have purpose in life, for everyone to know why they're getting up in the morning.
Okay, it's Zweck.
Zweck, genau.
Okay, so we've talked about opera education and music appreciation. So I'd like to know the opera or even an aria from an opera that you think is the best starting point for most people. So if someone were opera curious and saying, I don't know where to begin, what would you say their entry point would be?
I would possibly look at Italian operas, and I would possibly look at Non mi dir from oh my goodness. Now my brain is...
That's what happens during the lightning round. All the facts that you have in your head at any given time, they just vanish during the lightning round.
So I would look at some of these really beautiful Italian operas, but I would also listen to, again, of course, Puccini. There's wonderful repertoire there, but if you ask me, I think the Non mi dir is one of my absolute favorite, most gorgeous, beautiful opera arias written for someone to just enjoy. And, here's another word that comes to mind, actually, is Andacht. Does that mean anything to you?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
It's complete devotion. And these pieces require complete devotion. You have to put everything aside and listen. And that's another aspect of our teaching, is that we want students to learn Andacht and to actually just put things aside and listen. And that aria would be, I think, a beautiful introduction to do that.
Oh, interesting. I'm always glad to leave myself with maybe playlist recommendations, but also happy when listeners can add something to their Spotify playlist and maybe dip a toe in opera. And then finally, the Weihnachtszeit, the Christmas time or Christmas period, is a big deal in Germany. It's one of the things I loved about living there is they go all in.
Yes.
What is your favorite treat of the Weihnachtszeit? Do you have like a sweet tooth, or do you
Marzipan?
Marzipan from the
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't take long to answer that, right?
Not at all.
And Glühwein.
And where do you source that locally? Where do you get your marzipan or your Glühwein?
Oh, so marzipan, well, Trader Joe's, actually, I will say. I don't know if I'm supposed to call it names. Glühwein is around, but I actually make it myself.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I used to make marzipan myself, and I also used to make Rumbälle myself. So that was, and then I would distribute them to everybody. But a couple of years ago, our goat got out, and I had them, getting cold, and they have lots of rum in them on the front porch. And my husband didn't know that, and he let Frederick out, and he ate pieces out of every one. And he got drunk, and I didn't have time to make new ones, and we had to drag him so he wouldn't find his cage anymore. And that was the end of my rumball adventure. So Freddie recovered, but I didn't. And those are the things that I miss. But yeah, Glühwein and Marzipan and Lebkuchen.
Yeah.
And the smell of when you go into
The Weihnachtsmarkt.
Weihnachtsmarkt, that is a unique, almost I want to say spiritual experience, where you just surround yourself by everything, and, you switch off guilt. That's the first thing you do. You just switch that off and leave that outside the door. And then you just, enjoy all the wonderful things that are there, and the scent and the smell. Yeah, I miss that. And the peacefulness, and, there's a feel to it that you leave the busyness behind.
Yeah.
And, we have days where, we are not open all the time. There's time where we really let things be and rest and devote ourselves to these special and unique experiences.
Yeah, I have to say, I have as much of a sweet tooth as anyone, but the thing that I love most about the Weihnachtsmarkt is the Grünkohl.
Oh, Grünkohl.
A bowl of that and I'm set. I love it.
the Grünkohl, and that's a special time during the year where you get to eat Grünkohl. Mm-hmm. And Matjes, I'm from Bremen up north, the herring. So yes, there's some wonderful things, but I'm also noticing there, especially in Sandpoint, there's a little bit of European flair coming in.
Oh, that's nice. I might have to drive up there to get my Weihnachtsmarkt fix.
Yes, you do. And, of course, we have some local stores that are bringing some really interesting and unique imports. And then there's some people who are looking at how can I make it myself. And, the market is expanding here to incorporate some of these unique items that you can buy them here, and they're good quality.
Okay. A little international and very cosmopolitan corner up there.
Yes. Yes, for sure. So, and I'm part of that.
Well, Karin, thank you so much for coming in today and talking about all this. And I will reiterate that I am very jazzed about what is happening up in Sandpoint, and especially at the MCS.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure. I really thank you very much.